Welcome to the Flats Sequencing System Delivery Unit Training Program. The Flats Sequencing System advances flats processing by sorting flats in the precise sequence that carriers deliver mail along their routes, significantly reducing the need to manually sort the mail. This allows mail carriers to begin their deliveries earlier, increasing their available time to deliver the mail. FSS prepared flats do not need to be cased. FSS will automatically sequence flats at a 2-pass system throughput rate of approximately 16,500 pieces per hour. This will yield a significant increase in overall delivery productivity. The purpose of this video is to provide delivery unit personnel with information on the FSS and delivery point sequenced flats. At the conclusion of this video, viewers will be able to perform tasks associated with FSS rolling stock and street trays. Postal supervisors can provide personnel with the FSS delivery unit user guide upon request. Safe operation and handling of rolling stock is necessary to maintain the health and well-being of USPS personnel. Always approach any equipment mindful of safe operation and handling. The FSS automates the preparation and feeding of flats using mail prep workstations, transport conveyors, and automated induction feeders. Flat mail is inducted into the Standalone Mail Prep or SAMP area, where operators prepare flats into green automation-compatible trays or ACTs. Prepped ACTs are conveyed to the dolly maker that stacks full ACTs on dollies. Full dollies are transported and inserted into the FSS main dolly induct. Here, the full ACTs are automatically removed from the dollies and inducted for first-pass sortation processing. Automation-compatible trays are conveyed to the automated induction-equipped feeders at each in-feed line. Each input line feeds flats into the sorter module, which then sorts mail into blue rigid captive trays or RCTs. During Pass 1, the flat sorting machine, or FSM, sweeps RCTs and sends them to the Automated Tray Management System, or ATMS. RCTs are then staged and rearranged as required in preparation for Pass 2. Flats are transferred from the blue RCTs to the green ACTs for automatic induction into the sorter for Pass 2 processing. Flats are then sorted into delivery point sequence for each carrier. At the completion of Pass 2, sequenced flats are verticalized and transferred into yellow street trays. A labeler prints and applies a human-readable dispatch label to the street tray. The street trays are then placed on a carrier automated street tray rack or caster. Fully loaded casters are then removed from the flat sequencing system and loaded onto trucks for transport to the delivery unit. Casters are constructed of a steel frame with molded plastic shelves. Each caster holds 12 street trays, 3 per shelf, on 4 shelves. An empty carrier automated street tray rack weighs approximately 270 pounds and approximately 690 pounds when fully loaded. The caster is mounted on 4 wheels, 2 that swivel 360 degrees and 2 that are fixed in place. One swivel wheel has a braking mechanism used to secure the cart. To apply the brake, press down on the brake lever until it locks in the down position. To release the brake, press the top of the lever. The carrier automated street tray rack is equipped with a handle that should be used to push the caster. Do not push a caster using the frame or shock absorber. Casters are compatible with USPS standard towing equipment. The handle end of the caster is equipped with a towing pin, and the opposite end has a towing bar. 3 casters can be safely towed at a time. The caster holds 12 street trays. The weight of a full street tray is approximately 35 pounds. To assist in accessing the top shelf, it is equipped with a lowering mechanism. Before lowering the top shelf, push the vertical flats on the shelf below towards the back of the caster. Then grasp the release latches located on each side of the top shelf and squeeze the latches either together or one at a time. The top shelf lowers slowly only after both latches have been squeezed. The carrier should always take a step away from the shelf as it lowers. The top shelf is equipped with a lip to prevent full street trays from sliding off the shelf in the lowered position. Do not attempt to raise the shelf alone when it contains one or more street trays with flats. The shelf can hold up to 135 total pounds of flats. To raise the loaded shelf safely, 2 workers are required. 1 worker can safely raise an empty shelf. Each carrier automated street tray rack contains a caster manifest enclosed in a see-through pouch that details the location of the flats on each shelf. The caster manifest also displays the caster sequence number, day of delivery, and 5-digit zip code. A master manifest provides an overview of all casters created and their contents. The master manifest contains important information such as number and location of street trays for each route. Each carrier should consult the master manifest to determine where their flats are located prior to removing street trays from any caster. Once the carrier has identified the street trays on the caster, unloading can begin. Always make certain that the caster wheel brake is set before loading or unloading the street trays. The street tray is made of a durable molded plastic and designed with handles at each end for safe lifting and carrying. An empty street tray can be used as a lid for another street tray to protect the flats against weather or to guard against crushing the flats, especially during transport. To unload the top shelf of the carrier automated street tray rack, move close to the caster with your feet at a comfortable distance apart. Firmly grasp the front handle of the street tray, slide the street tray forward, and grasp the rear handle. Keeping your back in a straight line, remove the street tray from the caster. Be sure to avoid any twisting of your torso while handling the street tray. Place the street tray onto the appropriate rolling stock, making certain to keep the street tray close to your body. Improper lifting techniques may result in injury. To unload the bottom shelf of the carrier automated street tray rack, move close to the caster with your feet at a comfortable distance apart. Bending with your knees and not your back, firmly grasp the front handle of the street tray. Slide the street tray forward and grasp the rear handle. Keeping your back straight and the street tray close to your body, lift with your legs, not your back, in a smooth motion. Turn with your feet, avoiding any twisting, turning, or abrupt movement. Place the street tray into the appropriate rolling stock used to load your vehicle, making certain to keep the street tray close to your body and bend your knees and not your back. For maximum efficiency, street trays can be randomly unloaded from the casters and do not have to be unloaded from top to bottom. Street trays are equipped with labels that identify the route, street tray number, 5-digit zip code, and the delivery day. The last street tray for a carrier route is identified with the letter L. Street tray labels should not be manually removed from the street trays, as this process has been automated by the FSS. Once emptied, street trays can be nested within each other. However, street trays should never be nested on a caster. It is important that casters loaded with 12 empty street trays be returned to the FSS site within 24 hours. The delivery unit staff should remove debris or trash from street trays to ensure that trays are ready for use at the FSS site. Relay marker cards should be consolidated and returned to the processing facility on an identified caster. All street trays must be returned to the processing facility and not left with customers. Safe operation of carrier automated street tray racks will prevent injury to yourself and others. remember to safely move, break, load, and unload casters. You should now understand the following. The Flat Sequencing System, or FSS, automates the preparation and feeding of flat mail using mail prep workstations, transport conveyors, and automated induction feeders. The Carrier automated street tray racks are constructed of a steel frame with molded plastic shelves and weigh approximately 690 pounds when fully loaded. The caster is mounted on 4 wheels, 2 that swivel 360 degrees and 2 that are fixed in place. One swivel wheel has a braking mechanism used to secure the cart. The horizontal handle should be used to push the Carrier automated street tray rack. The caster top shelf can hold over 100 total pounds of mail. This requires 2 workers to safely raise the shelf. Tray labels should not be removed manually. All street trays must be returned to the processing facility and not left with customers. Always move, break, load, and unload casters safely. The Flat Sequencing System will provide the fastest, most efficient automated flats processing system in the world today, while providing the lowest industry cost and the highest industry standard. Success is never assured. It takes a lot of hard work to make it happen.